The polishing cloth slipped from my fingers. Just dropped right onto the concrete floor where Wesley's 1967 Ford Mustang should have been sitting. The space was empty. Completely empty except for dark oil stains marking where my husband's pride and joy had lived for 39 years. I stood there frozen, staring at nothing. My chest felt tight, like someone had wrapped steel bands around my ribs and was pulling them tighter with each breath I tried to take. My name is Genevieve, and I'm 74 years old. Wesley died 3 years ago last March. Every Saturday since then, I'd come out here with that same cloth and a bucket of soapy water to polish his Mustang. It kept me close to him somehow. Kept his memory alive in the smell of leather seats and motor oil. But now it was gone, and I didn't understand how or why or when it had disappeared from our garage. I walked around the empty space like I was visiting a grave. My footsteps echoed differently now without the car there to absorb the sound. On Wesley's old workbench, his tools were still arranged exactly how he'd left them. Socket wrenches in order of size. Screwdrivers lined up like little soldiers. The red toolbox he'd gotten for his 30th birthday sat in the corner, closed and dusty. Everything else was here. Just not the car. Just not the one thing that mattered most. That's when I saw it. A glossy travel brochure lying on the workbench, half hidden under a shop towel. Rome. The Colosseum on the cover, all golden in sunset light. I picked it up with shaking hands and opened it. Someone had circled hotels, restaurants, tourist sites. Handwriting I didn't recognize. Neat, feminine loops. Not my son Kalen's messy scrawl. This was his wife Serafina's handwriting. I'd seen it on enough birthday cards to know. I called Kalen's cell phone. He answered on the 4th ring, sounding distracted and annoyed. Background noise suggested he was at a restaurant or bar. When I asked about the car, there was a long silence. Too long. Then he said something that made my blood run cold. "Mom, we needed the money. Serafina and I are going to Rome next month." The car was just sitting there collecting dust. Dad would have wanted us to live our lives. He said it like it was nothing. Like he'd sold an old lamp at a yard sale. I hung up without saying another word. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the phone. On the pegboard above Wesley's workbench, I noticed something else missing. The spare key to the Mustang. The one Wesley kept there for emergencies. It was gone too. They'd planned this. Kalen and Serafina had come into my garage, taken my husband's keys, and sold his car like it belonged to them. Like Wesley's 40 years of love and care meant absolutely nothing at all. What would you do if your own child sold something irreplaceable without asking? Drop a comment below and don't forget to subscribe. This story is just getting started, and you won't believe what happens next. Kalen and Serafina arrived at my house 2 hours later. I'd called them back and told them to come over immediately, and for once, my son had heard something in my voice that made him obey. They walked in through the kitchen door like nothing was wrong. Serafina was carrying shopping bags from expensive stores downtown. Her hair was freshly highlighted, blonde and glossy. She smiled at me like we were best friends about to share tea and gossip together. I didn't waste time with pleasantries. I asked them straight out where the car was and how much they'd gotten for it. Kalen shifted his weight from foot to foot, not meeting my eyes. He mumbled something about $12,000. $12,000. For a fully restored 1967 Mustang that Wesley had spent decades perfecting. For the car my husband had driven on our wedding day. The car he taught Kalen to drive in when my son was 16 and nervous behind the wheel. Serafina spoke up then, her voice sharp and confident. She said the car was a dusty relic taking up space. Said it was just sitting there depreciating while they had dreams and plans and a whole life to live. She actually used those words. Dusty relic. Like Wesley's life's work was garbage. Like the thousands of hours he'd spent in that garage restoring every inch of that vehicle meant nothing compared to their vacation plans and Instagram photos in front of Roman fountains. I told them they had no right to sell it. That car was mine, part of Wesley's estate, part of my inheritance from my husband. Kalen finally looked at me then, and what I saw in his eyes shocked me. No guilt. No remorse. Just irritation that I was making a fuss. He said I was being selfish. Said I was hoarding memories instead of letting them build their future. Said Wesley would have wanted them to be happy, to travel, to experience the world while they were still young enough to enjoy it. Serafina pulled out her phone and showed me their flight confirmations. Rome. Non-refundable tickets. Hotel reservations at some 5-star place near the Spanish Steps. Restaurant reservations. Tour bookings. Everything already paid for with the money from Wesley's car. She said it so casually, like she was showing me pictures of a new dress she'd bought. $12,000 spent before I even knew the car was missing. Spent on their dream vacation while I stood in an empty garage trying to understand how my own son could betray me like this. Then Kalen dropped the real bomb. He told me he'd had himself added to the car's title 4 years ago. Said Wesley had agreed to it to help with insurance paperwork, to make things easier if anything ever happened. He pulled out a crumpled document from his jacket pocket and showed me. There it was. Both names on the title. Wesley's and Kalen's. My son had planned this for years. Had waited for Wesley to die, waited for the right moment, and then sold our car out from under me without a second thought about what it would do to my heart. Can you believe what just happened? The betrayal goes even deeper than you think. Hit that subscribe button and keep watching. Genevieve's story is about to take a turn nobody saw coming. The next 3 days were hell. Kalen and Serafina didn't leave. They stayed in my house like nothing had happened, like they hadn't just ripped out a piece of my soul and spent it on Italian wine and hotel rooms. Worse, they started treating me differently. Not with guilt or shame, but with this awful, patronizing kindness. Like I was a confused old woman who needed to be managed and handled carefully by the responsible adults in the room. Serafina started making comments about my memory. Little things at first. She'd mention a conversation we'd supposedly had where I'd agreed the car should be sold. I never had that conversation. Never. But she'd say it with such confidence, such certainty, that I started doubting myself. Started wondering if maybe I was forgetting things. She'd catch herself mid-sentence and say things like, "Oh, I'm sorry, you probably don't remember." "That's okay, Mom." She'd started calling me Mom. It made my skin crawl every single time. I demanded they give me the money back. At least half of it, since Kalen claimed he co-owned the car. Serafina laughed. Actually laughed. She said the money was spent, and besides, I didn't need it. Said I had the house, had Wesley's pension, had his life insurance payout from years ago. She'd done her research, apparently. Knew exactly what I had and what I didn't have. Her eyes were cold when she talked about money. Not the warm, loving daughter-in-law eyes she showed at family gatherings. These were calculating, predatory eyes that saw me as an obstacle. I threatened to call the police. Kalen pulled out that title document again and explained very slowly, like I was a child, that because his name was on it, the sale was completely legal. Civil matter, he called it. Not theft. Not fraud. Just a family disagreement over shared property. He said if I pushed it, I'd embarrass myself and damage our relationship forever. Said people in town would think I was a bitter old woman who couldn't let go of the past. Said I should be happy for them instead of ruining their joy. Then things got worse. Small things started disappearing from around the house. A framed photo of Wesley and me from our anniversary trip to Yellowstone. The compass he'd kept on his desk. His reading glasses that I'd saved in a drawer. When I asked about them, Serafina would shrug and say she hadn't seen them. Or she'd suggest maybe I'd moved them and forgotten. Maybe I was getting confused. Maybe I should think about getting some help, seeing a doctor about memory issues that seemed to be getting worse with age and grief. The final straw came when Serafina sat me down at my own kitchen table and gently suggested I should consider moving into a retirement community. For my own good, she said. For my safety and well-being. She had brochures. Had already researched places. Said she and Kaylin were worried about me living alone in this big house with my failing memory and grief-induced confusion. I realized then what they were doing. They weren't just stealing Wesley's car. They were stealing my whole life. And they were making me look crazy so nobody would believe me when I tried to fight back. This is absolutely devastating. But Genevieve is stronger than they think. Drop a comment if you're rooting for her, and make sure you're subscribed. The next chapter changes everything. That night, after Kaylin and Serafina finally went to their room, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, thinking about that title document. Something about it bothered me. Wesley was meticulous about paperwork, about legal documents, about anything involving that car. He would have told me if he'd added Kaylin's name. Would have discussed it with me. We made every major decision together for 43 years. Why would this be different? Why would he do it behind my back? I got up at 3 in the morning and went to Wesley's office. It was really just the spare bedroom where he kept his desk and filing cabinets. I hadn't touched much in there since he died. Couldn't bring myself to sort through his things, to box up his life and carry it away piece by piece. But now I needed to know the truth. I needed to find something, anything, that would prove Kaylin was lying about Wesley's intentions with that car. The filing cabinet was organized exactly how Wesley organized everything. Color-coded folders, alphabetical labels, dates written in his neat block letters. I found the folder marked Mustang and pulled it out with trembling hands. Inside was everything. The original bill of sale from 1967 when Wesley bought the car for $3,000. Receipts for every part he'd ever replaced. Photos documenting the restoration process year by year. And at the very back, a title document. The original title. With only Wesley's name on it. Nobody else's. Just his. My heart started pounding. I compared the document in my hand to a photo I'd taken of the one Kaylin had shown me. They looked similar but not identical. Different weight of paper. Different seal from the DMV. Wesley's original was dated 1967, updated in 1985 when we'd moved to this house and changed our address. Kaylin's version was dated 4 years ago, like he'd said. But something felt wrong about it. The signature that was supposed to be Wesley's didn't quite match the signatures on the other documents in the folder. I kept digging through the filing cabinet. In a folder marked important, I found something that made me gasp out loud. A handwritten letter from Wesley, dated 2 months before he died. It was addressed to me. He'd written it in the hospital during one of his cancer treatments, his handwriting shaky but still readable. The letter talked about how much the Mustang meant to him. How it represented all the best memories of our life together. How he wanted me to keep it forever, to remember him every time I looked at it. The last paragraph made tears stream down my face. Wesley wrote that he was leaving the car specifically to me in his will. That Kaylin had asked about getting his name added to the title, but Wesley had refused. Had told our son the car was mine and mine alone, a symbol of our marriage, something sacred that couldn't be divided or shared or sold. He'd known. Wesley had known that Kaylin might try something like this. And he protected me the only way he could, with written words and legal documents hidden in a filing cabinet where he knew I'd eventually find them. Wesley knew. He saw this coming and tried to protect Genevieve. What happens next will blow your mind. Subscribe now and keep watching. Justice is coming, and it's going to be sweet. The phone rang at 9:30 the next morning. I was sitting at the kitchen table with Wesley's letter and the original title spread out in front of me, trying to figure out what to do next. Kaylin and Serafina were still asleep upstairs. I grabbed the phone before it could ring again and wake them. A man's voice on the other end asked if he was speaking with Genevieve. I said yes. He introduced himself as Sterling Hayes, owner of Hayes Premier Classic Cars downtown. Sterling said he needed to talk to me about a 1967 Ford Mustang that had been sold to his dealership 3 days ago. My chest got tight again. He said the sale had bothered him from the moment the young man walked in. Something felt off. The seller knew nothing about the car's history, couldn't answer basic questions about the restoration work, seemed desperate to sell it quickly for whatever price Sterling offered. Red flags everywhere. Sterling had been in the classic car business for 35 years and developed an instinct for these situations. He'd done some research after the sale. Ran the VIN number through his databases and collector networks. Discovered the car had a documented restoration history spanning 4 decades. Found articles in classic car magazines about Wesley's meticulous work on the vehicle. Found photos of Wesley at car shows with the Mustang, winning awards, talking to other enthusiasts about original parts and period-correct details. Sterling realized he hadn't bought a car from its owner. He'd bought someone's legacy from a thief, even if that thief was family. Sterling told me something that made my blood run cold. The car was worth far more than the $12,000 Kaylin had mentioned. A fully restored, documented 1967 Mustang in the condition Wesley had maintained was worth somewhere between $45,000 and $55,000. Maybe more to the right collector. Kaylin had either been lied to by whoever appraised it, or he deliberately undersold it to get quick cash. Either way, he'd stolen $30,000 to $40,000 from me. From Wesley's memory. From everything my husband had worked for. Sterling said he wanted to make this right. He'd already contacted the buyer he'd lined up for the car and explained the situation. The buyer was willing to wait while Sterling helped me sort out the legal ownership. Sterling had the paperwork from Kaylin's sale, including that title document with both names on it. He said something about it looked suspicious to him. The paper quality. The way the signatures were placed. He'd seen fraudulent documents before, and this one had all the signs of being altered or forged entirely. Then Sterling said something that gave me hope for the first time in days. He told me about a lawyer he knew who specialized in elder fraud and estate disputes. Someone who'd helped other families when inheritance items were sold without proper authorization. Someone who could look at Wesley's original title, his letter, Kaylin's suspicious document, and figure out what legal recourse I had. Sterling offered to help me fight this. A stranger who'd never met Wesley, who'd never met me until this phone call, was willing to stand beside me against my own son. I started crying right there on the phone. Started crying because after days of feeling alone and crazy and gaslit, someone finally believed me. Someone finally saw the truth. Yes. Genevieve found an ally. But Kaylin and Serafina don't know what's coming yet. Subscribe and hit that notification bell. You do not want to miss what happens when they find out the car is worth 4 times what they thought. I met with Sterling and his lawyer friend, Margaret Thorne, that same afternoon. I told Kaylin and Serafina I was going to the grocery store. They barely looked up from their phones. Margaret was probably 60, with silver hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. She examined Wesley's letter, the original title, and photos of the document Kaylin had shown me. After 20 minutes, she looked up and smiled. Not a friendly smile. A predator's smile. She said we had a case. A strong one. Margaret explained that if Kaylin had forged or altered the title document to add his name without Wesley's genuine consent, that was fraud. Criminal fraud, not just a civil matter like Kaylin had claimed. The letter from Wesley stating explicitly that the car was meant for me, combined with the original title showing only Wesley's name, created a paper trail that contradicted everything Kaylin had told me. Add in Sterling's expert testimony about the car's true value and the suspicious nature of the rushed sale, and we had grounds for legal action that could result in serious consequences. But Margaret suggested something better than just filing charges. She wanted to give Kaylin and Serafina a chance to make this right before involving the police. Not because they deserved mercy, but because public exposure would be more effective than a quiet legal settlement. She asked me about their plans, their social circle, their pride. I told her about the Rome trip. About the bon voyage party Serafina had been planning for weeks, inviting all their friends and neighbors to celebrate their big vacation. Margaret's smile got wider. She said that party would be perfect. We spent the next week preparing. Margaret got Wesley's letter notarized as evidence. Sterling had the Mustang appraised by two independent experts who both valued it between $48,000 and $52,000. We contacted the DMV and requested an investigation into the title document Kaylin had presented. They found irregularities in the paperwork trail. No record of Wesley signing anything to add Kaylin's name. The signature on file didn't match Wesley's signature on other DMV documents. Someone had committed fraud, and there was now an official investigation open. During that week, Kaylin and Serafina grew increasingly bold. They stopped pretending to be nice. Started openly talking about their trip, showing me their planned itinerary, their shopping lists for new clothes and luggage. Serafina kept making comments about how I should really consider that retirement community while they were gone. Said it would be easier for everyone. Said she'd already scheduled a tour for me at Meadowbrook Senior Living next week. Said the car money proved they were responsible enough to make decisions about my future care and well-being. I played along. Acted confused and tired and defeated. Let them think they'd won. Let Serafina believe I was seriously considering her retirement home suggestions. I even looked at the brochures with her, nodding along while she pointed out amenities and care levels. Inside, I was counting down the days until their party. Until the moment when their whole carefully constructed world would come crashing down in front of everyone they'd been bragging to about their Roman holiday funded by their inheritance from Wesley. The inheritance that wasn't theirs to take. The legacy they'd stolen from a dead man who'd loved them and trusted them and deserved so much better than what they'd become. Oh, this is going to be good. The trap is set, and Kaylin and Serafina have no idea what's waiting for them. Smash that subscribe button and buckle up. The bon voyage party was held at Kaylin and Serafina's apartment on a Saturday evening. They'd invited 30 people. Friends from work, neighbors, college buddies, couples they played trivia with at the local bar. The apartment was decorated with Italian flags and travel posters. Serafina wore a new designer dress she'd bought with money from Wesley's car. Kaylin kept talking about the Colosseum and Vatican tours they'd booked. Everyone was drinking wine and congratulating them on their big adventure, their successful careers, their bright future together. I arrived at 7 with Sterling and Margaret. I'd told Kaylin I was bringing guests, old friends who wanted to wish him well. He barely glanced at them when we walked in. Serafina air-kissed my cheek and immediately turned back to her audience, telling elaborate stories about the 5-star hotel and the Michelin restaurants they'd be visiting. I stood in the corner with Sterling and Margaret, watching, waiting for the right moment. My hands were shaking, but not from fear anymore. From anticipation. From righteous anger that had been building for 2 solid weeks. At 7:30, Margaret gave me a nod. It was time. I walked to the center of the room and raised my voice to get everyone's attention. I said I wanted to make a toast to my son and daughter-in-law before their trip. Everyone quieted down, raised their glasses, smiled at me with that indulgent look people give elderly parents at parties. I smiled back. Then I told them all exactly how Kaylin and Serafina had funded their Roman vacation. By selling my late husband's car without my permission. By forging documents to steal my inheritance. The room went silent. You could have heard a pin drop on the hardwood floor. Kaylin's face turned red, then white. He started to interrupt, to laugh it off, to accuse me of being confused again. But Sterling stepped forward before Kaylin could speak. Introduced himself as the dealer who'd bought the Mustang. Said he needed to share some information with everyone present. In a calm, professional voice, Sterling explained the car's true value. $48,000 to $52,000 according to multiple expert appraisals. Not $12,000 like Kaylin had told me. Margaret stepped forward next. She held up Wesley's letter, the original title, and the DMV investigation report. She explained in clear legal terms that Kaylin had used a fraudulent document to sell property that belonged to me. That the signature adding his name to the title didn't match Wesley's signature on file with the state. That there was now an official criminal investigation into document fraud and elder financial abuse. She said these words loud and clear so every single person in that room could hear them. Document fraud. Elder abuse. Criminal investigation. Serafina tried to salvage the situation. She started talking about misunderstandings and family disagreements and how I was grief-stricken and confused. But our neighbor Linda cut her off. Linda asked directly if they'd really sold a $50,000 car for $12,000 and spent the money on a vacation while telling everyone it was their savings. Kaylin couldn't answer. Just stood there opening and closing his mouth like a fish drowning in air. Then people started leaving. One by one, then in groups. Making excuses, avoiding eye contact, whispering to each other as they headed for the door. Within 15 minutes, the party was empty except for Kaylin, Serafina, Sterling, Margaret, and me standing in the wreckage of their social reputation. The look on their faces. But we're not done yet, the consequences are about to get even more real. Subscribe now because this is where everything comes together and justice is finally served. Serafina broke first. Started yelling about how I'd humiliated them, ruined their party, destroyed their reputation in front of everyone they knew. She called me vindictive and cruel and said I'd never forgive them for falling in love and wanting to build a life together. She actually said that. Made it about their love story instead of their theft. Made herself the victim of a bitter old woman who couldn't let her dead husband go. Margaret just watched her with those sharp eyes, letting Serafina dig herself deeper with every word. Kaylin tried a different approach. He got quiet and sad, used the voice he'd used as a little boy when he'd broken something and needed forgiveness. Said he was sorry, said he'd made a mistake, said he thought Wesley had wanted him to have the car eventually anyway. Said the title change had been Wesley's idea, that his dad had told him it would make inheritance easier down the line. But Margaret pulled out her phone and showed him screenshots of text messages she'd gotten from the DMV. Official communications stating that no valid title change had ever been processed with Wesley's genuine signature. That's when Kaylin's face changed. The little boy vanished. What replaced him was cold and calculating, just like Serafina. He said we couldn't prove anything. Said it would be my word against his about what Wesley wanted. Said even if the title was questionable, he'd already sold the car in good faith and the money was spent. Said we could drag this through courts for years and bankrupt ourselves on lawyer fees and still end up with nothing but damaged family relationships and public embarrassment for everyone involved. Sterling spoke up then. Said actually, we didn't need to go to court at all. He hadn't sold the Mustang yet. Still had it at his dealership, in storage, waiting for this mess to be resolved. He told the potential buyer about the situation, and the buyer had agreed to wait. Sterling said he was prepared to void Kaylin's sale entirely, return the car to me as its rightful owner, and testify in any legal proceedings about the fraudulent nature of the transaction. Kaylin could either face criminal charges for document fraud and elder abuse, or he could make this right. His choice. Margaret laid out the terms. Kaylin and Serafina would cancel their trip to Rome. They would repay me the full appraised value of the car, $50,000. They had 30 days to get the money together however they could. Loans, credit cards, selling their own belongings, she didn't care how they did it. In exchange, I would accept the payment, take the car back, and not press criminal charges. But they would also sign a legal document admitting what they'd done, admitting the title was fraudulent, and permanently relinquishing any future claims to my property or estate. Serafina started crying. Real tears this time, not manipulative ones. She said they didn't have $50,000. Said they'd already spent the $12,000 on trip deposits and her new wardrobe and Kaylin's new golf clubs. Said they'd have to take out massive loans, ruin their credit, maybe even sell Kaylin's truck to come up with that kind of money. Margaret's expression didn't change. She said that's what happens when you steal from family. That's what happens when you commit fraud. You face consequences. Real, painful, expensive consequences that follow you for years. And they were getting off easy because I still loved my son despite what he'd done to me and to Wesley's memory. They're finally facing the truth. But there are still 2 more chapters to go, and you won't believe how this ends. Subscribe and keep watching. Genevieve's journey isn't over yet, and the final resolution is absolutely perfect. 30 days later, Kaylin stood in my driveway with a cashier's check for $50,000. His face was haggard, aged 10 years in a month. He'd taken out a personal loan at a brutal interest rate. Sold his truck and was driving a 15-year-old sedan now. Maxed out 2 credit cards. Serafina had sold her designer clothes online and taken a second job waitressing on weekends. The check in his hand represented every dollar they could scrape together, and it still wasn't enough to cover their full debt when you added in loan interest and fees. The Rome trip was cancelled. They'd lost the deposits. Serafina had stopped posting on social media entirely after the party disaster. Their friends had pulled away, uncomfortable with the fraud revelations and unwilling to be associated with people who'd steal from an elderly widow. Kaylin's co-workers had heard about it somehow, whispered in break rooms, made him a pariah at the office. The social price they were paying was almost as steep as the financial one. Almost, but not quite equal to what they'd tried to take from me. Kaylin handed me the check without meeting my eyes. Started to say something that might have been an apology, then stopped. What could he say that would matter now? That would undo the betrayal or heal the broken trust or bring back the relationship we'd had before he decided my grief was worth less than his vacation? Margaret was there as a witness, making sure the transaction was documented properly. Sterling was there too, with keys to the Mustang and a smile on his weathered face. We drove to Sterling's dealership in 2 cars. Kaylin followed behind in his cheap sedan, Serafina in the passenger seat staring out the window with dead eyes. At the dealership, Sterling led us to the climate-controlled storage area where he kept his most valuable vehicles. And there it was. Wesley's Mustang. Cherry red paint gleaming under fluorescent lights. Chrome bumpers polished to mirrors. The white racing stripes Wesley had painted himself running perfectly straight down the hood and trunk. It looked exactly like it had the last time Wesley had driven it, 3 weeks before his cancer diagnosis. Sterling handed me the keys with a little ceremony, like he was returning something sacred to a temple. Said he'd kept it safe, had his mechanics check it over, had the battery maintained so it would start right up when I was ready to drive it again. Said Wesley had been a hell of a craftsman based on the work he'd seen under the hood. Said any man who could build something this beautiful and keep it running this perfectly for decades must have been someone special. I couldn't talk through the tears. Just nodded and held the keys like they were made of gold. Kaylin and Serafina left without saying goodbye. Just got in their car and drove away while I stood there with Sterling and Margaret beside Wesley's Mustang. Margaret handed me the signed legal documents. Kaylin's admission of fraud. His permanent relinquishment of any claims to my estate. A restraining order provision if he or Serafina ever tried to manipulate me again regarding finances or property or medical decisions. I was protected now. Protected by law and by Wesley's love and by my own willingness to fight back when it mattered most. The car was mine again. The house was mine. My life was mine. And nobody was ever taking any of it away from me again. Justice served. But there's one final chapter that will bring tears to your eyes. Stay with us, you've come this far, and the ending is absolutely beautiful. Subscribe if you haven't already. I didn't drive the Mustang right away. For 2 weeks it sat in my garage, exactly where it belonged, while I worked up the courage to get behind the wheel. Wesley had always been the driver. I'd been the passenger for 43 years, watching the road from the right side, trusting him to get us where we needed to go. The idea of driving his car without him felt wrong somehow. Like I was taking something that wasn't meant for me even though it was legally and rightfully mine now. But one Saturday morning, I woke up and knew it was time. The sun was coming through my bedroom window the way it used to when Wesley would wake me early for weekend drives through the countryside. I got dressed, went to the garage, opened the driver's side door and slid behind the wheel. The leather seat still smelled like him. Old Spice aftershave and motor oil and the peppermints he kept in the center console. I adjusted the mirrors, fastened the seatbelt, put the key in the ignition. The engine turned over with a beautiful rumbling growl that made my heart ache and soar at the same time. I drove through town slowly at first, getting used to the feel of the car. It handled like a dream, smooth and powerful, responsive to the slightest pressure on the gas pedal. People turned to look as I passed. Some of them probably remembered Wesley driving the same car through these same streets. Some probably remembered the scandal with Kaylin and Serafina, the party confrontation that had spread through the local gossip networks like wildfire. I didn't care what they thought anymore. I was driving my husband's car with the windows down and the radio playing his favorite country station. I drove out to Wesley's grave at Riverside Cemetery. Parked right next to his headstone, left the engine running so he could hear it. Told him everything that had happened. The theft, the betrayal, the fight, the victory. Told him I'd found his letter and it had saved me. That his love had reached across death to protect me when I needed it most. That the car was safe now, and I'd take care of it the way he'd taught me to. That I'd drive it every Saturday morning like he used to, keeping his memory alive in chrome and leather and engine oil. When I got home, Sterling was waiting in my driveway with a large envelope. Inside were photos from a classic car show happening next month 2 towns over. He said Wesley used to exhibit the Mustang there every year, had won awards, had been respected in the local collector community. Sterling thought maybe I'd want to take the car this year. Show people that Wesley's legacy was still alive. That his wife was still honoring his work and his memory. That love and craftsmanship and dedication couldn't be stolen or sold or destroyed by greed and betrayal. I thought about Kaylin sometimes. Wondered if he regretted what he'd done or just regretted getting caught. Wondered if he'd ever really understand what he'd tried to take from me. But mostly I didn't think about him at all. I thought about Wesley. About the 43 years we'd had together. About this car that represented all of it, the good times and hard times, the Saturday mornings in the garage, the road trips with windows down and music playing. I'd survived the worst betrayal I could imagine, and I'd come out stronger on the other side. That night, I sat in Wesley's office with a glass of wine and looked through old photos. Found one from our wedding day with both of us standing next to the Mustang, young and in love and completely unaware of everything coming our way. Found another from Kaylin's 16th birthday when Wesley taught him to drive, both of them grinning in the front seat. I cried looking at that one. Cried for what we'd lost. For the son I'd raised who'd become someone I didn't recognize. For the family that would never be whole again no matter what happened next. But I also felt something else. Pride. Strength. The knowledge that I'd fought back when it mattered. That I hadn't let them erase Wesley or steal his legacy or push me into some nursing home where I'd be manageable and quiet. I'd stood up for myself and for my husband's memory, and I'd won. Not everyone gets that kind of ending. Not everyone finds the strength to fight when their own family turns against them. But I had. And tomorrow I'd wake up and polish that Mustang again. And the day after that. And every Saturday for as long as I could hold a chamois cloth and remember what love looked like. Thank you for staying with Genevieve through her entire journey. Her story proves that it's never too late to stand up for yourself, to fight for what's right, and to honor the people we've loved and lost. Broken heart, if this story touched your heart, please like this video and subscribe to Never Too Old channel. We share stories of strength, resilience, and courage from people who refuse to be counted out just because of their age. Speech balloon. Now we want to hear from you. Could you forgive a child who betrayed you like this? Would you have fought back or let it go to keep the peace? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. We read every single one. Hit that notification bell so you never miss our next story. Remember, our best chapters can happen at any age. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.